You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, the Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang. Joining me, as always, is Skyler Timmins.
Howdy.
And a special guest this week, Dustin Timmins.
What's up?
It's a double dose of Timmins Brothers.
Times two. Timmins times two. TTT.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we
and
could always get our other two brothers on here. Get all four of us.
There's the Timmins clan.
No, Dustin and I are the baseball ones.
Yeah, those guys are clueless at baseball.
What do the other two specialize in?
They're more into like the academic side of things. No, they read a lot and they're into other things.
Baseball so they're nerds. Really
okay. No, I'm not going to say it.
I will. Yes, they are. they would fit right in with all the Simpsons references.
Yeah.
Nerd.
They like baseball. They're just not like super into it like we are. It's always the thing.
Well, fellas, we're in the dog days now. It's the final stretch.
It's a scrape the bottom of the barrel season for our episodes of the podcast.
Yeah, it sure is getting difficult to find things to talk about. But there is definitely one thing we can talk about, and it's the Rockies strike out a whole lot.
Woo!
Skyler, I think you had a stat that you posted on Twitter as part of your compilation of historical statistics for the year.
Yeah, big one for the Rockies. This is the most strikeout or their highest strikeout percentage in a season, and it's still probably will stick around there through the end of the year. Just beating last year's mark of around 25%. They're at around 26%, close to 27% this year. They're right on the cusp again to 27%. So they're striking out at the highest rate in franchise history, which it kind of correlates with the way the game is played nowadays of how many strikeouts there are just among baseball itself. But still, the fact that they're consistently getting worse and worse, that's an alarming thing. So there was that. And then also the fact that they have allowed opposing starters to have 15 starts where they've struck out 10 or more times, which is also a franchise record. So, yeah, strikeouts have been a big problem throughout the year, but especially as of late, where they set another mark, or they're near the top of another mark of striking out 70 some odd times in the course of a certain amount of games. I didn't quite catch the stat.
So through the first 5 games of this road trip, 3 in Atlanta and the first 2 games in Milwaukee, the Colorado Rockies struck out 75 times. That is the second most strikeouts by a team over any 5-game stretch in the modern era, with only the Milwaukee Brewers 77 in 2017 being more than that. And, strikeouts are at a record high across all of baseball. But something that's worth pointing out is that most of the good teams still do not strike out nearly as much as the Colorado Rockies do. The San Diego Padres only have 943 strikeouts. The Royals have 989. Cleveland has 1036. Houston has 1043. The Rockies have the second most strikeouts in all of baseball behind the Seattle Mariners with 1,429. And they are on pace to eclipse the total number of strikeouts in team history for a single season this year. Ooh. It's not great.
Yeah, for our audio listeners, Dustin's just at the bottom of our video feed, just shaking his head in disgust.
And there is a face being made.
Well, that's the thing. That's the face that I make while watching the Rockies offense. Is I go back to. We've mentioned it before, is the preparation that our hitters have. It's like they've never seen these guys, not even watched film of these pitchers, to expect what their pitch calling sequences are and what to expect. And they're just going up, well, I hope I can hit this one. Ezekiel Tovar when is he going to learn that first breaking ball's out of the zone and they're going to make you swing at it every time? So it's like those trends that they just will not break. And like we said, I heard Bud Black on the radio one time when Paxton was going to start his first start at Coors Field when he was with the Dodgers. And he's like, well, I think it was Jerry Schemmel was like, well, what's the preparation for this pitcher? And he's like, well, we're banking on he hasn't pitched at Coors ever, so we'll see how it goes. And he had like a career night against the Rockies. So every night it's just same thing, strikeout after strikeout, multiple. When we get in the double digits, it's like it's one of those blowout games. But then a game like today on Sunday, limited to struck out 6 times and won the game.
It gets to a point where we're Dustin and I pitching mindset when we can sit there watching a game and we can get to a point where, okay, we know what the opposing pitcher is going to start throwing our guys and kind of what the result's going to be. Oh, he's going to throw a fastball down and away, and Tovar is going to bounce it over to the second baseman. That type of stuff where the Rockies offense is so predictable now where it's surprising when, hey, they struck out only 6 times and we won. Sweet. Whereas we expect to get into those double digits most every night. It seemed like really earlier in the season, like in April, it seemed like every game was, well, we had 13 strikeouts and we walked once. So that was good.
Well, and so over the last stretch of games, last 6 games, the Rockies had 3 games in which they struck out 16 times, which I think their highest this season is 17, and they had at least gone a pretty solid stretch in the rest of the season of not getting that high, though it had been, pretty bad. And, to bring back Bud Black again, there's been a lot of hand waving of, well, this is a young team and they're still figuring it out. But it's like the whole point of the coaching staff is to be there for them to figure this out. Yeah. And to be adjusting plate approaches. And what it really comes to mind for me is, what exactly are the Rockies doing about the strikeouts? Because I remember the whole thing this offseason with Henzy Mullins and Bud Black was, we're installing our new pitching philosophy, our new hitting philosophy finally, to cut down on strikeouts and to drastically improve, especially on the strike to approach. And we just haven't seen that at all this year.
Or if we did, we saw Ryan McMahon's 2-strike approach was pretty good. And then he fell off a cliff during the second half where then you can't really tell it anymore. Like there was those little incremental things, maybe for a glimpse or like 2 weeks or just a month. And then it's so inconsistent where, goes out the window. We're just going to start swinging at everything again.
Yeah. And even when McMahon was making good contact and hitting well in the first half of the season, he was still striking out a decent amount.
Yeah.
I think my big thing about it is how many times do I watch a lot of these games and I got 3 kids and stuff going on at home. So when that starts, my attention goes away for a split second. When I come back, it's an 0-2 hole or, oh, he already struck out. And it's this lack of competitive at-bats where if I watched Sam Hilliard today, a 7-pitch strikeout. But he worked at it. It wasn't just 3 straight pitches and he was done. It's those kind of things. I'll take that strikeout any day. But it's these 3-pitch, the 4-pitch strikeout that I just can't handle.
The thing that always gets me in watching it, it's kind of in that aspect of what are they doing in those at-bats that's making them uncompetitive. And part of it is the Rockies, you see a lot of them, they're swinging out of their shoes. You'll get a lot of really aggressive swings. Ezekiel Tovar, I think, is a prime example of this, where he's got a nice aggressive swing, but it also gets him into trouble because he's missing or wasting a lot of pitches that he should be knocking out of the ballpark. Pitch right down Main Street, and he's fouling it straight back. And so that's not helping their issues. And I wrote an article over at purpleroad.com from earlier in the year titled something like the Rockies have a foul ball problem. And it was in that aspect where they're wasting a lot of these pitches in the zone that should be hittable, that they should be doing damage on, these fastballs, but they're missing them. And so then that's just digging a hole for them more, where then they're down 0-2. They're just dead to rights on a breaking ball, down and away, and severely limiting their chances doing stuff. So a lot of missed opportunities and pitches earlier in the at-bat is contributing to the problems and resulting in more strikeouts.
But it's just the whole team is, I feel like, not – we do see some competitive at-bats, but then those competitive at-bats still end in strikeouts.
Yeah.
And it just feels like they're not – what's the best way to put this? They, like you said, they swing out of their shoes at everything. The Rockies lead the league pretty handily in whiff rate. They're swinging at pretty much everything. They're second most in the league in overall swing percentage. And it's just something's not working here.
There's a lack of adapting pitch to pitch in an at bat. And like we can talk about, I think the way this team has failed to really follow the example of Todd Helton, Hall of Famer Todd Helton, because Todd would adjust that at bat every time. Finds himself no 2 count. Okay, he's going to shorten up and he's going to keep fighting until he can put a ball in play the way he needs to. That's what the Rockies don't do. And I think back, like, how much remorse is there about striking out? Is there an acceptance of, yeah, dang, I struck out. That sucks. I'm going to move on to the next thing. Well, it seems like just some complacency with strikeouts. And like Dustin can probably attest to this. When I was playing high school baseball, I hate striking out. Like, I'd get mad. It makes me mad to strike out. Probably didn't handle it too well growing up, but that mentality of like, I hate striking out because it does nothing for anybody. I strike out. There's a guy at second, even at third base. He can't move. It's done nothing for anybody except for me to just get mad and walk back to the dugout. It's not helping my team at all. And so how many times do we see with the Rockies, guy at third base, second base, and we just less than 2 outs and we just need a ball in play to move a guy over, and we end up striking out twice, and inning over, run scoring opportunities gone, negated. So there seems like a complacency with strikeouts. I don't know. I want to say they accept them, but there's just complacency where there's not much urgency in fixing it.
Yeah, and it's just like across the board, the Rockies just are not very good when it comes to things like pitch recognition and making contact. Like, yeah, they have a good zone contact percentage, so they make good contact with pitches in the zone, but then they chase everything out of the zone. They have one of the highest chase rates in the league, and like I said, they've got one of the worst whiff rates in the league. They're an incredibly aggressive team that isn't making proper use of that aggression. And so they just strike out. And like you said, Skyler, it's like, part of it is part of the modern game today is that people strike out a lot. Okay. But like I said before, the good teams aren't striking out nearly this often. And if they are, they're doing a whole lot more with it.
Yeah. Like if you're striking out that much, you better have a ton of homers to go with it too, and walks in general. And those last 2 parts aren't much in the Rockies' favor.
I mean, there's a couple guys who are just all of a sudden walking a ton, and that's awesome. Michael Toglia especially, he still strikes out a lot, but he has upped his walk rate to an insane degree. But the same can't be said of a lot of his teammates.
Yeah, it's a frustrating thing. And no, Dustin is somebody who like has coached kids and coached me and spent time around the game. What do you think the Rockies can do to address this, or if you were coach of the Rockies, what would you do to help address the hitting and cutting down on strikeouts?
A lifetime year after year rollover contract.
Yeah, sure.
I'll be set. I think the one thing that I just absolutely hate is this Coors Field hangover, and we blame all of our offensive struggles on this. The ball breaks way too if you're recognizing the pitch out of the hand, then you're going to know what it's going to do. I hate how they blow that out of proportion on, the ball breaks way too much. Well, is the fastball faster than at sea level than it is at Coors? And that argument in the Bud Black years is invalid because they've been an awful offensive team at Coors Field as well. And so that is my biggest thing, is get over that it's so much – it's a change of mentality. Maybe it is. But if you're going in and saying, I can hit on the road, how many guys can do it? And so that's like the first thing. I'm not that good of I was a terrible hitter. That's why I focused on pitching. But you turned out to be a pretty good hitter. My kid's a pretty good hitter. And I think that's, as a pitcher, teaching that, as Bud Black should to his hitters, from that pitcher's perspective of, this is what I'm going to try to do to you. I'm going to work. This is where my pitching, this is the sequencing I would use against you. And now let's get it done. Okay, how do you approach that? And we said Ryan McMahon was on fire in the first 2 months of the season. And since then, it's just gone back to the same old Ryan McMahon, where in the offseason, we'll continue to say, maybe this next year will be his breakout year. We all thought at the beginning, this is his year. And he went back to the same old guy. And we can look at Brenton Doyle from his transition from last year. What did he start to do? What clicked there at the end of the season? Those adjustments that he made to become the hitter that he was this year, and that was on him. And so it's what do guys, I would like to know what they do to try to improve. Or is it, well, I just show up to the batting cage and try to, and we're not there behind the scenes. How many guys are taking extra hacks in the cage after the games, like we've heard Hall of Famer Todd Helton would? On a bad game, was he out there, the pitching machine set to nothing but curveballs, and he's out there figuring it out?
It's a tough thing to solve, and I think that's the big thing. It's taking ownership of it, acknowledging it, and stop making excuses about it all.
The thing that bothers me about the Coors Field hangover excuse is that, yes, it's a real thing, but you've had 30 years to figure it out, and you've made zero progress.
And they've had some incredible hitters in their team's history, and then it's really started to peter off here in these last several years. Since 2019, really, it started to peter off more and more, where you're scraping by and you're seeing a lot of those problems in the offense that's still stuck in an old way and hasn't figured out how to adjust to the modern age of baseball and how to combat it.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of other teams do. And
it's like you said, they're not considerably better at Coors Field than they are on the road. Like this year at Coors, their slash line is better. 269, 334, 437 compared to 216, 276, 361. But the actual numbers aren't that far apart. They've only hit 5 more home runs at Coors than they have on the road. They've only hit 10 more doubles and 5 more triples at Coors than they have on the road. So the percentages are worse on the road, but the overall results are not that much worse. And I think that's the thing, is that they're continuing to complain these bad performances on, we're on the road and, the Coors Field hangover and all that stuff, but they're just as bad at home.
It's finding that consistency. I think the big problem with the Rockies, we can always tie it back to, is a lack of consistency in everything they do, and especially the offense, where we'll have one guy who's hot for a month maybe, but then everybody else is in a slump, and then that guy stops being hot and everybody else is still kind of there in that slump. Or maybe some guys will be a little okay, but there's no real consistency of approach and results at the plate, and builds up all kinds of problems for him. And I think it goes back to them dealing with strikeouts of how can we consistently put the ball in play, make good at bats, take good at bats, and cut down on those strikeouts. They're not helping anybody. Strikeouts do not do a dang thing for you, except maybe you can hope for a pass ball. That's it. And even then, as good as catchers are these days, you can't rely on that. This isn't high school baseball.
Yeah, it's not great. And I think one of the best things we can do is just waiting to see if there's a major change in coaching staff next year. Because this is not an issue that's going to get fixed this year. I think we can continue to expect to see high strikeout rates, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
Yeah, because there's a lot more power potential on this team than what we've gotten in way too many strikeouts.
But we are going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we get talking about another thing that it feels like we've talked about a lot this season. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler, joined by Dustin Timmins. And it's time once again, gentlemen, for what seems like an evergreen topic on this show. We get to talk about Kris Bryant again. Yay! And you know what? Look, when I say we're about as sick of talking about him as everyone else is about hearing him, I feel like that is a true statement. Would you agree?
I feel like we've talked about Kris Bryant more than he's actually played in these last 3 seasons.
That makes sense. But the reason why we bring up Kris Bryant is because, to quote the coaching staff, to quote Bud Black and the front office, he is running out of time to return this year, and they have it as questionable that he would return this year. And at this point, I think we can all agree when we say, why bother? There is 0 point to having him return this year at all, unless it's to massage his ego of going, look, I could come back.
Which is what you always want for a player, to have them go into the offseason with some sort of momentum. But yeah, like you said, what's the point of that with this contract and this player? It does nothing for this team.
Don't even get me started, fellas. I've listened to your guys' rants. Everybody, oh man, it just boggles my mind that oh man. It's that Band-Aid that we have to rip off and throw it away. Like, it just did not work out, and it never will. With his back, and here's the other thing is, he is a liability in the field. Every time he comes back from injury, what does Bud Black do? Throws him back out to the outfield. We're like, I thought that's what broke him in the first place. And he throws him back out there and does it again. He goes to play first, and he runs into the netting. Boom. Back to the IL. It's just doing it over and over and over. And I'm hoping, is my hope, that it's the last we've ever seen of Kris Bryant in purple pinstripes, because we don't need it. The leadership, Jake Cave came in and took over the veteran leadership or whatever. I don't care. We have got youth that are ready to go. They're exciting. They're not broken. Our ownership needs to just say, well, we screwed up on this one. Hopefully the cattle sales are good next year, because we're done. I think as Rockies fans, we're done. We don't want to hear it anymore. Just erase him off the books and let us live our lives. And he can, do what he wants. But here, no more.
Because you bring up Jake Cave having taken over the, the veteran leadership part, but Jake Cave has also hit better than Kris Bryant since joining the Rockies, is a better defender than Kris Bryant, is more plug-and-play versatile. Like, heck, you could, I hope they don't, you could teach Jake Cave to play first base if you really needed to.
He's played it with the Phillies.
Yeah. And we see him. We see Jake Cave all the time. He's the people's champ or whatever. Where's Kris Bryant been? At home on his couch? Like, in these 3 years that he's been, I don't even know what he looks like.
Well, he's still quite handsome, but outside of that,
but he's never around. I never see him looking at Kris Bryant in the dugout. Why don't they throw him up in the booth and he can talk to them? He's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and it's like with Jake Cave, something that I've really loved from Jake Cave, love him or hate him, with how much he's played this year and all this other stuff, is that he is always very visibly and emphatically getting excited or supportive for his teammates. Like when Brenton Doyle made that crazy catch, Jake Cave gave him the most emphatic butt slap I've ever seen. He's on board. He's bought in. And that's part of why I've bought into, if Jake Cave is going to be here as a fourth outfielder, that's fine. But with Kris Bryant, we're not even getting that. And we're now 3 years into this. Each year he's had multiple stints on the IL. And this third year, he's played the fewest games of any season with the Rockies so far. He only made it to 37. He at least made it above the 40 mark in 2022. He's just not here. And the thing is, there's no buy-in from the fans either. The fans do not care about Kris Bryant. And that was part of, I think, the whole reason why Dick Monfort wanted to bring in Kris Bryant, was because it would get butts in seats. But when I go into the Diamond Dry Goods store and I look at the clearance rack, it is a great big circle of Kris Bryant jerseys.
Yep.
Hundreds of them.
How much are they going for?
$70.
Still too much. When the jersey costs more than the amount of games he's played, that's a problem there. Yeah, but in 3 seasons, we haven't gotten a full season worth of Kris Bryant in 3 years.
But I don't even want a full season of him.
Yeah.
For the product that's been out on the field, I don't need that.
And I think that's the big problem too, is when he has been on the field, not doing anything. You know, like we mentioned, Jake Cave is making what, $1 million this year, roughly, in 2024. 26 million less than Kris Bryant, and he has performed better. He's been healthy. He's played on the field at a much more demanding position, run around in the outfield, and he's hit better. It just goes to show, like, we're not getting our money's worth, and he couldn't bring those good graces of Chicago over with him. We're here. Chicago fans, they're a different breed. They have, hell or high water, they have been through the thick and thin with the Cubs until they won that World Series. And he comes over here and we just don't care here in Colorado. No, it was cool. We were happy at the beginning. Like, oh, this is a kind of a weird signing, but let's hope for the best. I think Bryant's a good player. Let's see what he can do. And that he has not done anything worthwhile. It's Russell Wilson all over again. I'm wearing Russell Wilson's jersey at the moment. He's done
you can say it's a Drew Lock jersey.
But there's a Wilson on the it's Zach Wilson, but the wrong number.
But it's with Bryant especially, it's just been also diminishing returns. So in 2022, I wrote an article that was like, if he can stay healthy, he's shown that he can still produce. Because in 2022, in 42 games, he still had an OPS of 851. I was like, okay, small sample size, but look at that. If he can stay healthy and this year is a fluke, then we're okay. And he can't stay healthy, and the numbers just keep getting worse. So 2023, an OPS of 680, and this year in 37 games, his OPS is 623.
Yeah.
Only 2 in the 37 games he's played in 2024, 5 doubles, 2 home runs, 15 RBI. So he's got 7 total extra base hits in 37 games.
Ew.
That's not a product worth putting on the field.
Yeah. No matter how much you're paying him, that's not worth putting on the field.
And he's got nowhere to play either because he's not a good hitter, so you don't want to put him in at DH. And the guy who has ostensibly replaced him at first base, Michael Toglia, is astronomically better than him right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's younger, he's better, he's a fantastic defender. He's shown legitimate growth this year with his career high walk rate right now. He's actually lowered his strikeout rate significantly, and he's got 23 home runs, 11 doubles, and 3 triples.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so he's showing an evolution to his game that you're not going to get out of Kris Bryant.
And I think that's the thing with Kris Bryant is he's at a stage in his career where he would actually need to do some drastic mechanical or offensive changes, stuff that he's been doing for years and years. He would have to change it, overhaul at the plate to actually get to a point where he can be competitive again, because he's had one of the longest swings in baseball, but it's also one of the slowest swings in baseball, and that results in his weak hit, hard hit rate, some drastic things that he would need to do to compensate to become competitive again.
And not to mention with his back injury, the stuff that they say, I just imagine how miserable it would be to swing the bat and to swing it hard. And what is he, 32, 33?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I've made my money, and now it's time to, be a dad, do something else. And, I guess he'll just be like the Rockies' Bobby Bonilla, and they can defer that, pay it off, however long it needs to be, but it cannot be out on the field anymore for the Rockies.
And the Rockies are no strangers to deferring contracts. We were still paying Todd Helton until a couple of years ago, and we're still paying Vinny Castilla technically. But for Kris Bryant, it's, Dustin, you'll get it. We're the old timers of this show. Your back just doesn't start feeling better the older you get.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and as bad as it is, it's like we said, that there is that physical thing at Coors Field. Playing at altitude, your body does need more time, more rest, more hydration, all that. But it's in that sense, I am human, and I feel for Kris Bryant. And that's my medical expertise, is just hang it up, buddy.
But honestly, I think that's part of feeling for Kris Bryant, is like, he's going to get those millions of dollars anyway. Baseball contracts are fully guaranteed. He's getting that money. There is no, if you want to go, I'm hanging it up. The body can't do it anymore. I'm going to go make sure that I can still, pick up my kids without screaming in agony. Do it. You're still going to get paid.
Yeah. It's something they got to figure out something to do this offseason. I think that's going to be one of the pressing matters of what do we do with Kris Bryant? Do we keep rolling out the sunk cost fallacy and we have to keep playing him because we're paying him, or just rip that Band-Aid off, set him free, let him go home? Time to go home.
The thing is, almost everybody else knows exactly what needs to be done. And it's drop him. You got to cut him. I see plenty of people out there in different parts of the media and the fan base and everything going, there's nothing to be done but to cut him. You got to rip the Band-Aid off. Mm-hmm. And the question is, waiting to see if the front office, Dick Monfort especially, will agree with them.
And that would require him to admit he made a mistake. Because I think Bill Schmidt would probably do it, would be more inclined to do it, but only if boss man at the top says, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It's not great.
It's not good, Bob.
And then we've got a whole other outfielder with back issues on our hands that we need to figure out where he fits in. And that's Nolan Jones, where our 4th place finisher for National League Rookie of the Year voting last year has has missed a ton of time this season. When he has played, he's struggled, especially at the plate. His defense has been fine. Like at the very beginning of the year, he was having a lot of issues with his defense. Since coming back, it's not really been a problem. But the bat remains an issue where he's just not hitting well. Some of his lowest numbers in his career so far, worse than his rookie season with Cleveland, way worse than last year. He has an OPS of 620. He has just 3 home runs, and he's worth like negative 0.6 wins above replacement right now. And Nojo is 26 years old, and there is a boatload of other outfielders in the farm system. So now we have another decision to make.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. And there's been a lot of stuff come out where he's struggled with the pressure that he's put on himself this year. And that's contributed to a lot of things. This pressure that he needs to perform, and he's supposed to be this core piece of the Rockies moving forward. And he's the guy after that good solid year. And so I think that we've heard that's contributed to a lot of those struggles. And then the injuries just really popped up and started to nag him, where then he's trying to compensate for the injuries by doing more, and that's hurting him. And so just this vicious cycle that I think a lot of those competitive athletes get into of perfectionism and the pressures. And so they're not listening to their body, and it's hurting them more than helping them and all this stuff. So that's a big part of it. But then him coming back finally since he came back August 20th. So he's played 16 games. This is including Sunday. I don't think he played on Sunday though. But
he did not.
Yeah. So in 16 games, hitting 241, 295 on base, 315 slugging. Not great. 18 strikeouts, 5 walks. He's got 13 hits, 4 doubles. Not a lot of home runs. Hasn't had a home run since it's been a while. Not since June 29th was when he had his last home run, I believe. So yeah, it's just been a year that did not pan out for Nolan Jones. A horrific sophomore slump for old Nojo. And so, and like you said, with the clock is ticking with so many outfielders, it was kind of a make or break you, where a lot of these guys can't afford to have those step backs. And unfortunately, Nolan Jones was one who had the big step back after having such a bright future ahead of him in 2023.
And I saw something this week. I can't remember where it was, but they were talking about projecting the future of the Rockies and, their future lineups. And what stuck out to me is Nolan Jones wasn't on one of those lists. They had, I think it was Zac Veen, and they had Doyle and Beck, and it was Yanquiel Fernandez, and Nolan Jones was nowhere to be found on this list. And that's why I brought up to Skyler this afternoon is, what do we do because he fell completely off the map this year after a very promising, first year with the Rockies. And it's hard because it's been the same thing all year with him. Again, strikeouts. I look over and Nolan Jones is in an 0-2 hole already in a split second. And it's just doesn't look comfortable at the plate. Watching the ball go by when it's like last year, I remember you just ripping those. And this year just completely washed of a season. And since he's been back, I thought Buddy Black would put him in, just start plugging him right back in there like he was last year. And he hasn't been there. We've seen, Sam Hilliard getting more games and more at-bats than Nolan Jones and being more productive.
Yeah. And I haven't been able to confirm, unfortunately, but I am pretty sure that they're being cautious about his back and his health, that he's not really fully ready to go. And I think for Nolan, what it's all going to come down to is he's going to need to win a spot in spring training next year.
Yeah, I think that's a big, and he's a guy without any options left. And so, and for a team like the Rockies, options are precious because it allows you to cycle, especially when you're kind of rebuilding. And those guys that don't have options aren't really producing. It makes them somewhat expendable because, hey, but we need that precious roster space and we got to protect some guys. We can maybe hope to pass you through waivers and get you off the roster and outright you to AAA. But, he would be on an option to get picked up by somebody. And so he's going to be a curious one to figure out what they do, because I'm sure they're frustrated by how this season turned out. Because you think, how could this season have turned out differently if Nolan Jones had maybe just been able to build on what he did last year and continue forward? Because then all of a sudden, your lineup's looking a little bit better with a Tovar, a Doyle, Jonesy, McMahon for those first couple of months, Tolia. That's a good 1 through 5, 1 through 6 in the lineup. Not too shabby. We're probably having the same conversation about strikeouts and all their other problems, but it's taken a step back, and it's, I think, muddied the Rockies' future a little bit, and we'll talk about some of those other options a little later, but it's tough to see. He's got a lot of work to do to really get back in good graces and confirm he's not a one-hit wonder. He's not Tyler Colvin. He's Nolan Jones. He's better. But right now, he's Tyler Colvin, minus the taking a wood bat to the neck.
Whose birthday it was recently.
Good for him.
But yeah, just more question marks about the future, a future that we are going to continue to discuss right after this next break. So don't go anywhere, and we'll do our final segment right after this. Welcome back to our final segment of Affected by Altitude with Evan, Skyler, and Dustin. And we were talking in the last half about some decisions this team needs to make towards the future. But it feels like there are some decisions that might be being made for them. And a guy that we want to talk about right now is one Mr. Zac Veen, who's knocking on the door to the majors at last after 2 really difficult seasons, a lot of injuries and a lot of frustration on the Zac Veen front, where I think we all kind of thought he might have been up here already at some point, and it hasn't really clicked, especially with all the injuries. He's dropped a lot off of some of the prospect rankings just because, one of the best abilities is availability, and he hasn't played that much. But Zac Veen is finally in AAA, and he's playing pretty well. Like, he's not incredible. There's definitely still room for growth there, but he's got 4 home runs already. He's stolen 4. He's a perfect 4 for 4 on stolen bases. He stole home this weekend. He's doing a lot of things right. And so while his percentages, like his batting average and stuff, aren't quite there yet, there's a lot to be excited about with Zac Veen.
Yeah, he's one that I think we've talked about this before, where they were like, he's got to conquer AA. But at some point, you got to just do what you can to help him build some confidence. And I think moving him up to AAA just to see some better pitching, even better pitching than he did in AA, I think will help him in the long run and getting used to playing at altitude and there in Albuquerque, where he's not having the same, big, giant, AAA boost that we've seen in the last couple of years from guys with a Tolia or a Jordan Beck or some of those guys. But he's actually taking his licks there in AAA and learning and growing, where I think that's a good place for him to finish out this season, and probably get added to the 40-man roster in the offseason, and then work through the offseason into spring training and make his debut at some point. I'd probably see him in 2025. There's no need to rush him up this season because he's not looking super great down in AAA with some of those numbers like you mentioned. But there's still potential for Zac Veen. It's just a matter, can he do it? Can he show that growth and overcome?
Yeah, and for Veen right now, we're still seeing a lot of frustration as he's had some difficult seasons. If you've watched some of these Albuquerque games where he's played, you can see him, he'll strike out or he'll ground out, and he's very visibly frustrated. He'll slam his bat down, he'll toss his helmet, and he really is like, he's taking his lumps. It's been a much more difficult path for him than I think any of us believed it would have been. You know, going all the way back to when he was in the Futures game a couple of years ago, I think we all thought, you know, this kid's coming sooner rather than later. And then he had that wrist injury that he tried to play with for a long time, ended up needing surgery, ended up spending a bunch of time on the IL this year. And you can tell that, you know, because Veen multiple times has said, like, my goal is to get to my big league debut. I want to be there. I want to get that done. But things just keep getting in the way of that. And he had it, you know, I wouldn't say he conquered Hartford, but he had a pretty respectable season down in a very pitching or up in a very pitching friendly league in the Eastern League, where he had an OPS of 816. He had 5 home runs and he stole a bunch of bases. Like, that's one of the things, is that he can hit for power, and he's also got one of the keenest base stealing minds I've seen in a while from a Rockies player. Mm-hmm. Like, Brenton Doyle is a great base stealer because he is wicked fast. Zac Veen is not as fast as Brenton Doyle, but he steals a crazy amount of bases because he's just got such a good instinct for it. And I think when he makes... What was that?
He's tall and fast like a gazelle.
And I think when he makes it to the big leagues, I think he has a chance to really be a major contributor to this team.
Yeah.
But he's got to make it first, and he's got to get some things turned around, and that's okay as well. Like, the path to the big leagues is rarely an easy one,
especially for like the high schoolers. You know, they are so used to dominating their respective little high school league they play in. So it's pretty easy to stand out and feel like the baddest dude on the planet when you step up into the box. And then as you start to face better and better competition through that minor league system, sometimes it can be a reality check for some of these guys, or like Zac Veen, and they've talked about it. He had to get his butt kicked. It's good that he gets his butt kicked, because they got to face that and learn from it, and maybe it humbles them and realize, oh yeah, I need to work a little bit harder and develop. And he's the type of guy that can do that. That can take that and go, okay, I need to work on some things. And so I think they're in AAA. It's good that you can get frustrated. That's just natural part of athletics. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to be mad that you struck out or you grounded out, didn't do what you wanted to do. But it's what does he do next after those moments? Pick his head up, forget it. He goes to his hitting coach, goes to Jordan Pacheco and say, okay, what can I do better next time? I think that's what's going to help Zac Veen the most moving forward, and what will help him become the player we hope he can be.
But a lot of it too depends on what happens this offseason. Mm-hmm. If they decide to do anything, or we're just going to keep holding on like Gollum to my precious, with all these guys, because it's a my precious Gollum. That's what they do.
That's not bad.
Stupid fat hobbitses.
Used to, when I was a kid, I used to be able to do, and of course now we're totally off the rails. I used to be able to do a pretty good Spiegel impression, but my voice just got so deep when I was in high school that I couldn't do it anymore. But, that's not bad.
Well, I terrorized one of our brothers. He was terrified of Gollum, and I may or may not have glued 2 yellow eyes into his window and scratched it at night and freaked him out, scarred him for life. But anyway, it's one of these things that the Rockies just they create these log jams. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Zac Veen gets stuck in AA for 2 years. They won't move anything up at the top, or if there is an opening, they bring him up for a couple weeks, and then he gets the Sean Bouchard treatment, or it's what they do, because I'm pretty sure we're penciling in Doyle's going to be there for a while. Jordan Beck has been there all year, pretty much. And I plan on him being there next year. Yeah. And so the big question mark, like we just said about Nolan Jones, that would be his opportunity. And so then we go to the 4th outfielder. Well, again, at the end of the season, you know, what are we going to try to bring Jake Cave back again next year? Is Sam Hilliard going to be back in AAA with them again next year and then bring him back up? So it's a lot of question marks that, again, we got to hope and see we actually do things to address it over the winter. Or are we going to keep waiting till the next window of real opportunity is in 2026? We're just going to keep rolling the same, ball of dung up the hill, and then all of a sudden it's going to flourish in 2026.
Well, and it's like you said, Brenton Doyle has earned his spot. He is the team's center fielder. I am more positive now than I have been all season that we need to just lock that down and commit to him being the team center fielder. Jordan Beck has shown promise enough that I am okay with him being the starting right fielder next year. Let's do it. But when the Rockies, when 8 of their top 15 prospects per MLB pipeline are outfielders, so you've got Charlie Condon, Zac Veen, Yanquiel Fernandez, Cole Carrig, Jared Thomas, Sterling Thompson, and Robert Kalaz. That's a lot of outfielders for competing for basically one spot, left field, or right field if you want to move back over to left field, which he can play perfectly adequately. He's played a totally fine left field this year. But you're running out of space and you're running out of time. And it's like, and now we further complicated things because Cole Carrig has played a ton of center field now. But we've got a little bit more time on him. But then if you're picking Brenton Doyle, you're basically saying, well, we don't know what we're going to do with Cole Carrig. Yanquiel Fernandez is off to kind of a rough start in AAA. But when he gets a hold of that ball, to quote, I think it's Eric Longerhagen of Fangraphs, that man has considerable thunder in his hands. And he's knocking at the door. And so the question is, like, you've now got Zac Veen knocking on the door, Yanquiel Fernandez, a bunch of other outfielders. You've got to figure out what you're doing with Nolan Jones. You've got to figure out what you're doing with Kris Bryant. We still don't know if Charlie Blackmon is retiring for real or not. There are too many questions.
And somebody at some point in that front office has to stand up and fight, start figuring out some answers, because baseball is a proactive sport. You can't just sit on your hands and, there's a lot of sitting and waiting, but you still got to do something.
That's why I wish we could get a Dylan Dan O'Dowd again. Remember when he came in and just bang, bang, boom, he started shipping everybody out for stuff.
Yeah, they weren't good deals, and they didn't always help, but it was a level of proactiveness that we don't really see anymore.
Anything with all of that, and for the outfield, we got to get some pitching out of, and we're starting to build up that starting pitching wealth. I saw a stat in today's game, the bullpen, the last 9 games has been lights out. And it's because we got these younger guys, these flamethrowers that are going and competing and limiting the walks. And so these things, there's, as much as we dog on the Rockies and, there's a lot of hope. It's coming. It's just, are they going to make the right moves for them to shine? And who's going to be at the head of it? Pushing the Rockies, this next generation, forward.
That's going to be a big one too. And all of this, are you going to have a manager that's on board with having more of these young guys and figuring out some of this stuff to help shuffle through, instead of somebody's like, no, I just want veterans out there. You need somebody at the helm who can help bind to what I think we've talked about this too, haven't we? I think Bill Schmidt does have a vision of what he wants to do. He kind of has an idea of when he wants to do it. At the very top, that's kind of been a problem. And maybe his manager has also kind of been, influencing how things are done.
You need buy-in. You need buy-in on all sides, because some of these draft picks that have been made, some of these acquisitions that have been made, Oh boy, they're working out dandy. Chase Dollander looking like a bona fide ace. The 1-2 punch right now, or the 1-2-3 combo we've got in the bullpen of Seth Halverson on Helchevie and Luis Peralta, they all look fantastic. Seth Halverson's been great so far. You know, Angel's taken his lumps, but he's bounced back from every challenge. And Luis Peralta looks like a great deadline acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
We've got these pieces. We need to put them all together.
Mm-hmm. And then you support those with your Jake Caves and other guys like that. So you focus on your youngsters and your homegrown talent, your draft and develop mindset that they've talked about. That's your core. And then you supplement that with your veterans. You know, you get your Zac Veen in there in that mix too, your Nolan Jones, but you also have that Jake Caves of the world that are in that mix, just there to help guide the youngsters.
But here's another. When are we going to start considering Ryan McMahon a veteran?
Yeah,
he's been there for a while, ever since
end of 2017.
Yeah, Arenado went bye-bye, and he's been there. Brendan Rodgers has been there for a hot minute. And these guys, those are your team leaders. Those are your elder spokesmen. And so, you know, it's, I don't know. We'll just have to hope and see.
Yeah. I do think so much hinges on this offseason. There are so many things that need to be done this offseason. We need to know if this team is going to trade guys like Brendan Rodgers or Austin Gomber or Cal Quantrill. We need to know if they will rip the Band-Aid off with Kris Bryant. We need to know if Charlie Blackmon is retiring or not, because if Charlie Blackmon says, you know what, I decided I'm not retiring, I can almost guarantee you that the team's going to bring him back next year.
Here's $20 million.
So it's just there's too many questions that need answering right now. And it's tough because the hope is so tantalizing. It's there. You can see it, but you need to drag it up to the surface.
Mm-hmm. The life preserver's there floating on the ocean. Rockies just need to swim up and grab it. And not grab the old, tattered up one and hold on to that instead. There's a nice fresh one.
But then look out, there's a shark in the water, and he goes, well, what if we sign Charlie Blackmon to another big contract?
Goodness. George Lucas, what are you doing here in the ocean as a shark?
This is what I do now. Ever since I sold the Star Wars properties, I'm very bored, so I decided to dress up like a shark and swim around the ocean and terrify people. It's my true calling. It's my true passion.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
The ocean is so dense.
Mm-hmm.
This is a stupid show. Having such a nice, serious conversation. Then just...
Do I need to do another Gollum impression?
Do it.
It's like, you know, they'll just do those things, and it's like Schmeagol when he's the split personalities, and he's go away and never come back. And it's like, that's what they do. They just keep bringing it back and making our lives. What are we going to do at the catching position? Drew Romo's got his feet wet, and he's gonna be going. You know, Jacob Stallings, great doing the backup, but Hunter Goodman has not looked bad. He caught again today on Sunday, hit a home run.
Hits.
Yeah, and
it
so
actually
catches.
It honestly makes me wonder, like, watching him throughout the end of the season and having him catch, is maybe we would be okay with a catching tandem of Romo and Goodman. Maybe we don't need to keep Stallings. I don't know. Like I said, there's too many questions. There's just too many questions that need to be answered. And that's the problem. This franchise really is, it's Slinker and it's Stinker. It's Gollum versus Smeagol. You got the one side who's looking to please and looking to get things done. You've got the other side who's actively self-sabotaging for their own self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good analogy.
Yep. I will also do my impression of Gollum from the 1970s Hobbit. My precious, my precious.
Oh, the Ralph Bakshi films. His Saruman of many colors.
Oh no, Mr. Frodo.
Oh, my man.
They did Samwise so dirty in that movie. Oh, that's Mr. Frodo. Oh.
But I think on that note, that's going to do it here for us on Affected by Altitude. Thank you so much for tuning in to us this week. Dustin, where can the folks find you at?
Oh, they're on the Twitters at Vamos Rockies. I also got Mr. T Spanish doing the TikToks. We're getting back into it. School's going, JV soccer's going, and occasionally throw out some baseball stuff.
Do a TikTok dance.
I don't know how many kids, how many students. Hey, let's do that. No, I'm good.
I'm pretty sure if you have a TikTok, you're required to do a dance.
Maybe.
It's in the terms of service.
There's no video of him doing the Pee Wee Herman.
Oh, yeah.
But can you, what is it, flossing the...
Oh, yeah.
I don't dance.
Been known to floss a little in my day.
Takes dental hygiene very seriously. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on Twitter at sideline_crowd. Also writing Wednesday rock piles at purpleroad.com and writing stuff over at fansfirstsports.com. And you can also find us, Dustin and myself, on every Rocky Ever podcast that we do here for Rocky Mountain Rooftop. And who knows, maybe this week that you're hearing this, there'll be this same crew talking about Rockies.
Like gasp. You can find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27. Love to hear from you. You can also catch me on Purple Row writing the Monday Rock Piles and doing the Pebble Report on Tuesdays. Pebble Report winding down for the season because that season the minor league season's almost over. I think it's today the Fresno Grizzlies are playing their last game of the season. And this coming week, the Spokane Indians will be playing for the Northwest League Championship. So it's going to be fun. And remember that you can always find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on your favorite podcasting platforms like Apple Music, iCloud, Spotify, Google Music, all of those stuff. I don't know why I said Apple Music and iCloud. I meant iTunes. Those are also both the same thing. You can also find us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Always been fun. Thank you.
And Dustin, how about you? Hit him with it.
Farewell.
Beautiful.